Well, this is Minnesota Pride Day here at Community Pride Day here at the State Fair. MinnPost.com is here, your leading source of online news. We've got several journalists who've been writing since the site's inception, covering everything from politics to public analysis. Right now, taking to the stage, I'm going to introduce two very pronounced and significant Minnesota journalists. They are Eric Black and Cynthia Dizikes. Cynthia Dizikes. Eric Black, after spending 30 years, in his words, scribbling for the Star Tribune, Eric rightfully refers to himself as a humble and ink-stained wretch. His column, Ink, regularly on MinnPost.com. It appears regularly on MinnPost.com, where he writes about politics and government of Minnesota and the United States. Eric is also author of Parallel Realities, a Jewish Arab history of Israel and Palestine, a book exploring the history there from the perspective of each side of the ethno-religious divide. That's Eric Black. We have a round of applause for Eric. Okay, I'm good. Okay, and then next is Cynthia Dizikes. Cynthia is MinnPost Washington, D.C. correspondent. She covers MinnPost congressional delegation and reporting on developments out of Washington that are important to Minnesota readers. She received a master's degree in journalism from UC Berkeley and has worked at the Los Angeles Times Washington Bureau and as a reporter for the Anniston Star in Alabama. Her work has also appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle, the Oakland Tribune, the Congress Daily, and on National Public Radio. Now can we have a round of applause for Cynthia Dizikes? Okay. Cynthia Dizikes. Okay, they will be talking about how the internet has changed how journalists cover politics. Hello, Cynthia. Hi, Eric. You guys have a microphone? Yep. All right, great. How the internet has changed covering politics. Cynthia Dizikes and Eric Black.
So I'll start, and I'm actually a somewhat interesting choice for this panel because I've really only known political journalism in the age of the internet. But I will say from my experience, I think the internet definitely means, at least in Washington, that you file a lot more. So for example, during the Sotomayor Supreme Court hearings, I was filing a number of times during the day. So after Senator Klobuchar would ask questions, I was in the hearing room filing right after that. And then after Senator Franken would ask questions, I was filing after that. And then at the end of the day, I did a sort of wrap-up summary piece. And before you had the internet, you would really just do the wrap-up piece at the end of the day, the sort of summary. So the internet definitely means that you're getting information out there a lot sooner, and there's a lot more of it throughout the day. And I think the other thing that I've used a lot being in Washington is clips from video that's taken of C-SPAN and floor discussions and audio as well. So that has changed too. So for instance, there was an amendment to a piece of legislation that Representative Barney Frank from Massachusetts and Representative Michelle Bachmann were coming to blows over, and there was a kind of fight between them on the House floor. And so with the internet, we could embed footage of that from C-SPAN onto MinnPost. So that's another way that I think the internet has changed how reporters cover politics. Eric.
Good morning. Thanks to all of you for turning out, and thanks for reading and supporting MinnPost. Yeah, I'm the other end of the spectrum. I'm the classic old fart that is supposed to be bemoaning the decline of more conventional newspaper journalism, but I actually don't fit that stereotype very well because I'm enjoying writing online much more than I did in my last years writing for the paper. I think almost everything about the internet as a news medium is better. As Cynthia mentioned, it's quicker. It's also possible to include, she mentioned audio and video clips. There is, of course, also the hyperlink, which enables you to refer a reader who's more interested in the topic than another one to the background materials. You know, there's a perpetual crisis in journalism of credibility, and it seems to me that if you can show the reader the documents that you're writing about, for example, in the case of let's say, well, when the Frank and Coleman case was decided and the ruling came out, there are people in the audience who just want to know who won, and there are people who can't wait to get their hands on the entire 50-page opinion and read it. And there's really not much a newspaper can do about that, but an online site like ours can. I believe we actually were the first ones to say what the ruling was within seconds after it had been posted on the internet, and within minutes after that, there was a link to the actual opinion. And as the day wore on, both Jay Weiner, who you already heard from, and I were reading the opinion and helping to analyze it. And so you can easily picture all the different levels at which a reader can choose to engage in that material, someone who is very motivated. Let's see, I guess we were supposed to talk about how this is affecting political journalism specifically. One thing I'll just mention about Cynthia being here, at its peak, I think the Star Tribune had 4 full-time correspondents at their Washington bureau, and the Pioneer Press never got that many, but they had a significant presence there. And at this point, I believe the only 2 full-time journalists covering Washington for Minnesota news organizations are the one remaining correspondent from the Strip, my colleague Kevin Diaz, and Cynthia, who represents MinnPost. And it is some kind of an entry point into the big change in the media landscape that, you know, one of the 2 could be working for an online startup like us, and it helps the site tremendously. And I know that there are many people who appreciate the extra attention that our delegation gets because we have Cynthia there. If I put myself in the shoes of a politician or their press people trying to figure out how to deal with this changeover, I have some sympathy for them having to face a lot of new questions. A lot of internet sites are very ideological or partisan, and when a politician is putting on an event, sometimes they decide to try to exclude the unfriendly sites. There was some of that during the Coleman campaign, during the late stages. They were much choosier about who they let into their events. It's not that I think that's appropriate, I don't. But it's also the case that because of the internet, there are a lot more news organizations, or depends on your definition of a news organization, because, you know, anybody can start a blog by themselves and show up and say, you know, I'm here under the First Amendment, I have to be let in too. Eventually there could be limitations on space, and I have some sympathy for the poor press person who's having to decide who gets in and who doesn't. Another advantage of the medium is the greater interactivity as well. You know, newspapers had letters to the editor. It was a slow, clunky process, and most letters weren't published. Online, it's a lot easier for a reader. Again, you could choose your level of involvement. Many people who read MinnPost never comment, but there is a significant group that comments all the time. And we have policies that try to keep our comment threads from degenerating the way they do on some other sites, and I think those are working pretty well. If anyone wants to, has never done so, take a flyer. It's a good place to comment.